Hey, welcome everyone. Sean Corbett, True West Realty Group, here in Grapevine, Texas. I've got a special guest today. His name is Spencer Chaffin with BC Counselors at Law. He and I work out of the same office. Gotten to know Spencer on several occasions, different things that we've done together. And I realized that he's got a niche market that is pretty similar to where I'm at. I'm in the real estate market, as most of you know, and he's in the estate planning market. That's really his specialty. So I wanted you to kind of talk about, kind of how you got into that and maybe talk about specifically your specialty of what you can do to help clients out.
One, we almost actually office literally in the same office. Since our walls actually meet, butt up to each other. That's how we met. So
Coincidentally.
It was just, and it was great that it all worked out. But the question of how I got into this area, man, I guess it was a long time coming. I was always called an old soul back in high school, and I didn't know I wanted to go to law school until my junior year of college. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to be an ambulance chaser. That's not me. I'm not the courtroom type. But I ended up going to law school going, well, I got to figure this out. And I did my first internship with a personal injury law firm and confirmed that is not what I wanted to do. So I had to think, okay, what is out there? And I actually learned about estate planning through this and talking with people. And I got an internship my second year of law school with an estate planning firm, and working with them just affirmed this is what I want to do. And the reason why I like it is not because I'm an old soul, but I just like meeting people. I like talking to people. I like enjoying being around people. And
hearing their stories.
That's exactly right.
Which is probably 90% of your deal. So they've got where they want to go, but there's a story to get there.
100%. Yeah. And the best part about it though, Sean, is they're telling a good story typically, not a story of I got hit, my back's broken.
You get a piece of one specific story. Now you get to see the life story.
I get the happy side. Like they're actually making the decision to come to me, not I have to go to an attorney. And that brings a different demeanor for a client. And so that's why I like what I do is people are coming with me with good intention, so to speak. Yeah. And they're not mad about something. Usually they're about, hey, I just got to get a plan in place and I'm doing this, not I'm forced to do this.
So. Sure. No, I love that. There's different places you can go in legal field and not actually have to go in court, right?
So you
could do
true.
Corporate law, you could be legal counsel, you can be you're going to teach.
You could. I've thought about that a little bit, but realized that I remember what I was like as a student, and I couldn't handle a guy like me in my class. But actually, that's what our firm does is we actually focus in the areas of estate planning and business planning. The reason being is we get a lot of clients that have real estate, and they either may have a rental company or they have some form of business, but they need an estate plan. So That's why those two areas interlock together very well for our firm.
So business planning has to do with you owning a business and what happens when you do pass, what to deal with. Are you talking about from get-go, we're setting up a plan to operate?
Both. So what I always tell people is when it comes to business planning, we can help from anywhere from setting it up to shutting it down and selling it or whatever, and anything in between.
Are you a business broker?
Not a business broker.
You haven't done any of that?
No, we don't do that. What we like to do is the transactional side of that. So if there's a business broker out there that's helping someone sell the business, we'll help do the legal documents.
The legal part.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So most of those business brokers don't have law firms inside their practice. So they're always hiring outside counsel, or that business that's selling already has their attorney that they work with. So
I don't want to speak too simply, but I always think of business brokers as kind of having, I wouldn't say an easier job. The only thing they do is line up a buyer and a seller, but you're going to have to get attorneys to set up all the proper documents. So it's kind of like, I'll give you my LOI, right? Which is your letter of intent to show interest in property or the business. And then if they agree to it, you got to have some general terms. It's what I'm willing to pay. I'm going to do my due diligence, blah, blah, blah. And then it goes to an attorney to actually draft what the documents are going to look like.
That's exactly right.
And that's what they ultimately agree to. Yeah. So it takes like all of the real think tank work out of it. You're like business development for legal paperwork.
Yeah. And I guess the business broker is good for maybe dumbing down what the attorney is trying to say because we have a hard time.
Yeah, you speak in legal terms.
Yeah,
right?
that's our problem.
And you need in layman's terms. Well,
yeah.
because what you're saying is exact.
Yeah, that's
Now-
exactly right. Yep.
Now, how do we make it relatable to someone that didn't go to law school, right?
Yep.
So let's talk about estate planning because I think that's
Yeah.
really kind of I've always thought of that as
That's me. That's so my business partner does a lot more of the business transactional work,
Okay.
and I do a lot more of the estate planning. So that is correct.
We're good. We got the right guy here.
Yeah.
In a general sense, what event, or age should people really be considering a will or trust, right? That's that generic answer.
Yeah.
I'm sure 90% of your people that come in here are probably over 60.
Probably, yeah.
Because they're reaching that point that like, I'm going to die. I better have something in place.
I would say maybe it's more about 60%. Because here's the answer to your question of, okay, where's that other 40% really coming from? And it's people with kids, minor kids. And the big event is, okay, if we're not here to care for our child for whatever reason, who's going to do that? It's not always so much about the money. Where's our money going? Because when you have a kid early on, you may not have established yourself financially yet, things of that nature. So it is really the focus is, okay, who's going to care for our kids? Then the next stage is more, okay, now that we've maybe accumulated some wealth, how do we pass that on to our children? And who's going to be in charge of that for our children?
Sure.
And then usually I joke, it's the kids are out of the house. Maybe they have kids. So you come back and revamp your plan to say, I'm leaving nothing to the kids. It's all going to the grandkids. Because but those are really the big stages. But those are stages in life. But the other big thing that when you obtain something that is a big reason for estate planning is real estate.
Yeah.
So if you go buy a home or you inherit a home, when you start owning real estate, that's where it makes good sense to get a plan in place. Because one, you've got a big valuable asset typically.
Yeah.
But two, that asset's a little bit bulkier to deal with, so to speak, on when you die.
Yeah.
How is it going to be dealt with when you die? Well, it depends on how it's set up. And there's different ways to deal with a piece of real estate compared to a bank account or a life insurance policy.
Or personal account, or personal property.
That's exactly right. So that's a really good asset.
So the two biggest triggers is having kids and then picking up real estate or some other major, probably going to be real estate. That's 99% of probably people's. Yeah.
Yes, that's really the big one is real estate.
So when you're talking with people, how do you make that determining factor between whether they go with a will or a trust?
It's a great question. So I really don't like to answer that for the client. So I kind of become a politician. When they ask me, hey, Spencer, what should
the pros and cons, right?
I do. I tell them the pros and cons. But what it really comes down to is both a will versus a trust. They're going to get the job done. They're going to get the assets from point A to point B. It's just a matter of which path they take. Now, a will is going to go through what's called probate. And probate is the court process of removing that asset out of someone's name and get it to it's supposed to go to.
Okay.
And that's done by state law. And what I mean by that is the procedures. So you got to have a hearing to appoint someone. Then you got to have all these filings and things of that nature. And it takes time, it takes months, sometimes years. With a trust is going to get those same assets from point A to point B, but it can actually avoid court and someone can deal with that asset. So take the house, for example, deal with the house immediately. Are we going to keep it? Are we going to sell it? Are we going to renovate it, then sell it? What, so without having to go to court and get approval.
In layman's terms, right? It sounds like incentivized, right? The expediency of it and the cost of it at time of after death is far better with a trust. Prior to that, trust typically costs more money to set up and establish. It costs more up front, but it really helps the expediency and it helps with avoiding the court and then and getting it all taken care of out there. So and less expensive, right?
That's exactly right. Here, you're exactly right on the fact of, yes, a will is going to be cheaper than a trust up front. The reason being is there's less work with a will up front compared to a trust. On the back end, a will has to be probated.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to hire an attorney.
Yeah.
You're going to have to pay court costs.
It's passing on those costs.
That's exactly right.
There's a strategy, right? You could still take that strategy and just get life insurance, for example. I know people will get life insurance just for the expediency and the cost of getting all this stuff done. That's what they use that money for. Maybe they get $100,000 policy, something simple.
Yeah, sometimes they don't even consider that. They just consider here's some cash and they don't understand what's going to happen to everything else.
A lot of the cash gets absorbed and just getting it to the,
That's exactly right.
There's not as much as they thought was available.
That's exactly right. So, but it's just, with a trust, because it avoids court, it's private. None of that information is public. And that trustee who you've selected to serve after you can immediately hire someone to help with the home, whether it be, like I said, sell it, renovate it, transfer it to an LLC to rent it, or whatever. They have that flexibility without having to get approval from a court, because the person that set the trust up has already built those rules into there, saying, hey, it's yours. You can do with it whatever you want within these parameters.
For people that do go through the, I guess, really either process, but I was thinking primarily through a trust, what do you feel like is their biggest challenge when they get the trust, they have to set up and they work with it?
Yeah. So the biggest challenge is going to be one, really it's the trustee. So the person who's in charge of administering everything and the beneficiaries working together.
I hear the trustee is someone that you don't like is who you want to have do it. The people you love, you don't want them having to go through that.
To an extent.
Have you heard that before? Something along those lines?
Kind of.
Or maybe you don't take a family member, you take a best friend, just say, hey, sorry, I'm doing this to you, but you take care.
That's kind of what I prefer. So with my family, if me and my wife die and our kids are minors, I have no family in charge except for who's raising my children.
Yeah.
Other than that, I've got a third party taking care of everything. The reason being is, if my kid goes and asks for a lump sum of money so he can go blow it on a trip to Vegas, and that person says no, well, he's mad at that person that he doesn't really know.
Yeah.
Instead of he's mad at grandpa, and now Thanksgiving's ruined. But
once you that emotional, I'm not even thinking through that. I'm just thinking through siblings and other people that have to kind of deal with that person.
Well, not necessarily. Sometimes it's a good fit for it, for the fact of, if those people know how you would have done things if you were here, that's good. Trying to explain to a third party,
gotcha.
Hey, this is a family house that's been in here for generations. Don't just automatically sell it.
I can see where it gets kind of complicated.
So picking that trustee is very, very important to know. One, what are your wishes? Two, do they understand what their duties are? Like when they step in, do they understand what they need to do to get things done for those beneficiaries and what's available to them? And then the beneficiaries, on the other hand, need to understand that there is some leeway for that trustee to take care of things. Just because you want it one way and your sibling wants it the other way, well, if y'all can't come to an agreement, that trustee has the authority to go do it.
Yeah.
And you both may not like it, but too bad. You kind of
can move forward at least.
Right. You shot yourself in the foot by dragging things along.
Yep.
So, but
that's good.
But the trustee is very, very important. We talk about that depending on the people's situations, on what's a good fit for them, of whether it's people, friends, family, or an entity, so to speak, a third party entity.
So the trustee is going to be a major challenge. What about assets and distributions and things like that? Are you ever on that side of it where you're actually having to help facilitate and execute based on what the trust says? Do you get on that side of it?
Yeah. So we call that trust administration.
So trustee has it, but he may not quite clearly understand, what am I really supposed to, because there's going to be gray area. It can't possibly identify every possible scenario.
That's exactly right. And you don't,
it just has someone that has authority in that scenario, but what is the best for what they're asking me to do? And they may not know how to answer that.
Yeah. How much rope do you give them, so to speak, and leeway and things of that nature? And that's kind of the tough thing. I've got a client right now who she inherited a trust from her dad. We didn't set it up, but we're helping her trying to interpret it with this third party trustee that's being more restrictive.
Yeah.
And we're trying to help navigate those waters without having to litigate it. Not that we would litigate it, but we want to try and get a happy medium for them.
So the beneficiary could sue the trustee.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. They're still available.
Say the trustee just puts everything in a savings account and only doles out very minimal things.
Yep.
And it's making things very difficult. Well, that's probably not what the person that's
the intention was.
That's exactly right. So they can sue that trustee to either oust them and put someone else in new, or force them to follow the rules, so to speak.
Can you be a trustee?
Could I be a trustee? Yes, I could.
Would attorneys ever want to be a trustee?
Some do. Yeah. We don't. The reason being is, one, I don't like the optics of it. If I set the estate plan up for
Sure.
someone,
Yeah.
does it look like I'm double dipping by appointing myself?
Yeah.
Like, why did grandma appoint the attorney
Yeah.
that set this up? That doesn't look good. And then two, our firm, we're just not set up for that. That's
Yeah.
not what we want to do. We like being
Legally, you could, but you got to
100%.
Yeah, like I'm in real estate. There's certainly a lot of things I could legally do. I could sell commercial. I could sell. Well, businesses are a separate thing, but I could sell all kinds of things that just aren't in my wheelhouse or my specialty. Wouldn't be in my best interest or my client's best interest if I got into that.
It's because it's going to take away from something else that you're wanting or able to do better. And I've got
set up to do
attorneys that will serve as trustee in certain trusts, and that's great. That's just not what I want to do for my practice.
So going through and divvying out the trust and way it's written and things like that. So you've got personal property, you've got maybe have some real estate in there, right? I mean, that's certainly a big component. How is it like working through a lot of those? Or you said bank accounts, we were offline. We've got IRAs, all those type of things. A lot of them are pretty straightforward in dealing with.
Yeah.
What about real estate?
Yep. So I'm going to give you the attorney answer. It depends. So a lot of times I'll get people that come in like, hey, I want it liquidated and then just split up between everybody. I go, great. That is absolutely an option. But let's talk about your family dynamics. You've got 3 kids, 2 are married, living out, they're out on their own, have their own place. And I see you've got an early 20-year-old that's in college, but lives in an apartment. Well, if we liquidate that house, is that an opportunity that they lost to receive a home? Or do you think maybe those 3 siblings want to start a rental business together? Well, if you tell them to sell that home, then they lose out on it. So you want a little bit of that flexibility that the beneficiaries can come together and say, okay, we've got a $100,000 bank account, we've got a $100,000 stock account, and we've got a $100,000 home, and we're all to get a third. Well, how do we divvy it up?
Yeah, we could only take one too.
That's exactly. Or we could all take a third of each.
Yeah.
We could own the house together, a third, and then we could all split the bank account and the stock account. And then from there, we can do whatever with the home. We can use that as a way to start renting, or we want to take it. We need to take it now because we all know it needs to be fixed up, and then we can sell it for more. So we don't want to rush through that. So let's split the bank account and stock account up. Let's take the home, fix it up together, and then sell it. And that's, something that they could do instead of being rushed through that process. But that's where the trustee and those beneficiaries have to work together on that, of understanding what's our end goal.
I'll save everyone a lot of time. Don't do that.
Do what?
Don't put your name on, don't have 3 siblings dividing everything into thirds. Don't do that.
Well, don't do that on a house for sure.
Which is kind of where my specialty is, right? So why is it that, a bank account is pretty straightforward.
Yep. Cash is cash.
Liquidity is cash is cash. Any stocks or any of those type of things, same thing. Pretty clean, pretty clear. Same implication, everyone on taxes. Everything else is probably pretty common. What about real estate? By putting 3 names on a property is problematic.
Oh gosh, one dies. Say one dies while owning that. Well, now if that person was married, their spouse probably owns their third now
without a will or anything else.
That's
by default, it would go to the spouse.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And now it's now you've got 2 siblings and a brother or sister-in-law. Well, they have different thoughts and minds. Go one step further. Say they weren't married, but they had kids. Well, now you've got 3 kids owning 1/9 with their aunt or uncle. And now you've got more chefs in the kitchen, so to speak, with opinions that it's causing problems. On top of that, say if it's just 1/3 anyways. Well, hey, I want to redo the kitchen. Great. I'm fine with that, but I only want to spend this much. Well, I think we need to do this, and it's going to cost twice as much. Well, then you've got issues on who wants to do what, who's willing to spend what, and things of that nature.
It's funny, I think about it kind of differently, right? So you create trusts or you create wills with the intention to alleviate that particular problem. When people don't, you end up with everyone having a piece of it, right? If you do nothing, then everyone has some type of stake in the property, and that creates complexity. And you could write a will and say, hey, I want all my kids. Honestly, I'll give you a good example. My wife's parents, Greg and Linda, they own a property in Highland Village, and they want it to stay in the family between Stacy and her sister, Kim. And he's very emotionally attached to things
Yeah.
including personal property. He's been there for 25, 30 years, raised the kids there. I want it to stay in the family. We have no use for this particular property. It's an upstairs master, upstairs utility. It has a lot of functional obsolescence to it. Could I convert it and make a rental property out of it all day? It's in a great area. But the particular home isn't one that either one of us really want to move into, Kim and Blake or myself and Stacy. It just isn't practical for what we have. And we have houses that really fit our needs. So that's a good example of his intention is just to leave it to his two girls. So I guess so he can close that door and feel good. And then it's up to us to figure out what to do with 50% house.
Yeah. Well, but here's the problem though, is you've got sometimes the house where the bulk of the assets are. And if you're trying to split everything equally between everybody,
sure,
you can't do it without leaving the bank account 50-50 and the house 50-50. And so that's where some of that comes into issue.
Yeah. From the front side going in, it makes logical sense. But the problem is the execution of it is where we have a
So let me ask you this then. How do you execute that then? What do you see as the solution?
Well, we get the bottom floor and they get the top floor.
Okay. So there you go.
I'm not doing that. I will honor his wishes because I'm in real estate. For me, fine. Leave us some money so I can renovate the house and make it perfectly suited for rental property. And then my hope, and I think they have a trust, so the trust will really own it. So it makes it so the trust can continue to grow and build on rental income, which is fine. I can set that up. We don't need the money.
Yeah.
They're fine. They don't need it. And then it's something we'll have to deal with later. At some point, we will sell it because there's no sense retaining it. And it doesn't need to be divided by 8s and by 16ths as we, just keep this piece of property in our family.
So my question still there is, okay, when your father-in-law dies, what is your solution to what he should have done?
Oh, yeah. Call me and let me show you people how to renovate the property. And I'm just kidding.
No,
we'll get to that.
That's absolutely. Yeah. But like,
so it's something I deal with. This is a kind of a specific, a field that I'm in, right? So I do real estate here in Dallas-Fort Worth, but I've gotten into this. I flipped over 100 homes. So I'm pretty proficient at taking a house from start to finish and advising everywhere in between, right? It could be a simple modification. It could be a rent-ready home. It could be full-on maximum value house based on what we need to invest in it. And it can be done anywhere in the US, right? And I've done this in several states already, in several cities. And what I do is I have someone in that situation that said, hey, my parents have left me this house and 90% of the time, there's not any renovation done in it. They've been in it for 40 years. Right? You move in a house and you're in your 60s and you lived at 90 to 100, darn well you ain't renovated the place.
Right.
So and I know that's just the way it is. They're comfortable. There's no reason to put money into it. They don't plan on leaving. So I'll just continue to maintain it.
Yeah.
And which is great. That's fine. It did its purpose. And now it's left to a family that's not interested in rental properties, VRBO, short-term rentals, any of that. They just want to get it gone. So I say, okay, great. Well, let's look at it. And then I'll say, if we put X number into it, we can return Y, right? Or something very simple like that. We can leave it as is. We could put some money into it, get this type of return because they want to exit. So it's really one or the other. We put money into it or we don't.
Yep.
And that's really kind of where a lot of them are. So that's kind of a business model I've gotten into and set up. And I love it. I mean, I go and find the contractors. I go and evaluate the property. I'm with EXP. I can do real estate anywhere in the US. And then I give them an exit strategy.
So you're talking about selling it before they receive anything.
Correct.
Right.
Yes. So
even when like a trust or will says, hey, you're getting 50% of the house.
Yes.
You could still sell that's what it allows for that flexibility.
Yeah, you can sell it as is.
Yeah. Sell it.
We can put some money into it and make more money.
You never take it in your name, sell it under that trust or the estate and the
proceeds are split 50-50. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Super
so
clean.
That's what we allow for that. Like if I say everything goes a third, that is absolutely an option.
All three get together and say, or they buy each other's interest out. And I know that happens because there's someone, there's going to be a family member emotionally invested, like, oh, I want the memory, I want the house, which is fine. I mean, that's certainly, we have the capability of doing that. Mine is strictly the exit strategy of moving the property on.
Right.
And determining, is it worth putting X number into to get a higher value? It would be different if I said, we can start here at $100,000 profit, but what if we put 50,000 into it and we could make $200,000 profit, right? So that's the kind of conversations that I have. And And I break it down in a very simple way.
Right.
So I've really gotten into that. And really kind of the biggest thing that I was wanting to identify is, the challenge, you identify procedural issues and you identify some of the other legal type aspects, because that's where you come from.
Yeah.
And I'm talking from someone who has a trust they're dealing with from a family member. I feel like personal property and bank accounts are easy, but the real estate is complicated.
100%.
So when you go through an exit, so this is a need. And I don't know of others, I don't know of many that really address that particular need. Everyone just says, okay, sell it, call an agent in the area and just put it on the market. And they lose so much money because they don't take the time to really look at and evaluate. And it costs very little to evaluate.
Right.
They just don't know who to call or talk to.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So anyway, so now you have someone you can refer people to.
Absolutely. Because it makes sense. It's either way.
Do you ever do things outside of Texas?
So we're licensed in Oklahoma, Texas, and New Mexico.
Okay.
So those are the 3 states that we are licensed to work in. Obviously, we get referrals from other states, but we connect them with the license
Sure.
in that estate or that state. But yeah, those are our 3 areas in regards to that.
Okay. Well, you got real estate that come up in it. You know who you can.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
talk to.
But see, like what people don't understand, and it's, which I get because it's an emotional time and it's a family thing, but it's still a business decision
Mhm.
of, okay, how are we going to deal with everything? And you want to try and take that emotion out of, oh, the home, because I want to keep it because there's memories. Okay. But is that the smart thing to do? Is that the proper business thing to do? Okay, fine. Let's get rid of it. Well, how do we get rid of it? Do we just go sell it? Which, like you say, you could lose out on a lot of money from that compared to, hey, let's at least look at it and see what we can do to raise the value.
Sure.
And that's where the trustee has that authority to go, hey, let's consider this before we sell it. One, like anybody that sells a home, there's going to be a punch list of that the buyer goes, well, I want you to fix this before. Okay, great. Let's actually look at that before we get it done. And that's where you come in and go,
Sure.
as well as we can do this, this, and this, and the value is going to go up even more. Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Sure.
Why wouldn't you do that? Instead of just, we don't care, we'll throw it on the market, just get what we get. Is that what your parents would have wanted?
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But you have that flexibility and that authority built into being able to just look into it. Like, it doesn't, like you say, it almost doesn't hurt to ask. So why don't you ask a few questions before throwing it on the market?
And renting could still be a good quality option if you want to, maybe the market's terrible for sale, right? Right now it's like today, it's in some markets, I've seen it drop, 40, 50,000 from what it was last summer. Last summer was an anomaly, right? It's kind of at the extreme of the extreme of the extreme.
Yeah.
So we have some really crazy sales back in the summer. So you can't even look at today compared to anything then.
Right.
But there was that period of time that was a super good time to get out. And then now we're in a market where you have to really think about if getting out now, or maybe we can appreciate that 5-6% if we want to take a chance on that.
Right.
Because typically real estate appreciates between 2 and 3% consistently. And then you have markets that it was going up like 15%, but that's not realistic.
Yeah.
Let's talk about estate planning and real estate. Since a lot of my audience is real estate related, what advice would you give clients about how to handle real estate?
Yeah. So really my professional advice to make things easy for the family upon one's death that owns real estate is to utilize a trust. The reason being is it can help avoid probate. And you're avoiding core, and it allows for that immediate authority to transition that property, whether that be sell it immediately, renovate it, then sell it. You can get that going immediately. You don't have to wait for a judge's approval. You also don't have to put that information out there. Here's who's involved, things of that nature, because it's a trust. It's not dealing with court. And so the reason, just like I said, that's why I like a trust, is the reason is it helps stay out of court. So you get that privacy, you get that immediate ability to actually start doing stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a seamless transition. Now, at a minimum, have a will. That way, with your will, you can say, okay, when I die, and once everything goes through court, here's how it's going to go. but that's going to take time. It's going to take months, sometimes years. And you just got to ride it out. And say, take for example, someone that died in January of last year, or, and they had a trust, and they were getting things ready to sell. Well, man, they could sell. But in an estate, a probate estate, they may have missed out on that high end. It may
they get stuck holding it.
Started
Yeah.
dropping because they didn't have authority yet, because no one was appointed as the executor to take care of things. So they couldn't go find a Sean to go update or renovate and then try and sell.
Sure.
Well, too bad. You missed out on it. I'm sorry. That's just the way that it goes.
I have a good story with that. We had a client that they literally moved. So they moved out of their condo. They were on a third floor condo in Dallas. They moved out of the condo, and he moved into a hospice. That was the arrangement. So they had already cleared out the condo. They had made the move, and then they connected with us. It's actually one of my agent's clients, and they connected with us to be able to get their house listed and sold. That was the wishes of the owner. And while he was in hospice, he got sick. He did sign a listing agreement, gave us permission to sell. And so we ended up putting it on the market. And the first day we had it on the market, he went to the hospital and passed away. No trust, no will. So they had to dissect and say, well, because he signed a listing agreement, it looks good, but there's no one that could validate or prove that. So we're sitting here with multiple offers on a house that I can't legally sell because I don't have signing authority from anyone. Yep. And they have to get that established now. And so they ended up having to chase that. That took, we ended up working out a contract with one particular buyer, and I made them an offer. I said, well, it's not a sellable house today. You have no competition. You put up your earnest money. We'll leave it open for you to take your earnest money if you go find something else. And I told them, I free get out of jail, they get their money back. So that was our offer to them if they're willing to wait. And they were willing to wait. And they waited for, it was only about 60, 75 days. It wasn't that bad. Okay, they were able to find someone that knew him and knew his intentions. And then they connected that with the attorney. The attorney got the package put together, gave it back to the court, and they were able to give us a free way for us to move the property. I think it probably would have closed in early February. But that buyer ended up walking. So they didn't even move forward with the home. But we were able to kind of jump through all the hoops to get it now established that we can now sell the property.
Yep.
So pretty crazy.
Yeah. Now one thing, sometimes people think, oh, well, a durable power of attorney would work, but that only works if the person's still alive too. So you gotta remember that. So take your example. Say he didn't die. He went to the hospital, became incapacitated. If he would have had that durable power of attorney, and in that power of attorney gave that person the authority to sell the property.
That's a real problem.
That could have worked too, but that doesn't always.
Maybe. The problem with the other side is like title insurance, a little bit stickier on power of attorneys. They have
title attorneys.
Yeah. So title has an issue with just taking some generic, I got authority to do everything I want to do to this person, right? So they've got to see something in writing that says clear picture that guy says you can sell this particular property on this date, and we'll accept that where he doesn't have to show up and sign. It's a real strict POA.
I joke that title attorneys are the worst attorneys, but I get why. Because they're ensuring that no one's going to come out of the woodworks and cause a problem for title.
Sure.
Which is a lot of money.
It's a lot of exposure.
That's exactly right. So I get why they're so nitpicky, because they have to be. And I just joke that they're the worst kind of attorney, but they have a big X on their back or crosshairs on them, or if something happens to that property because of title or some type of issue, it's on them. So I get that. But yeah, with a properly drafted durable power of attorney, and I'm not talking about the state form, the state statutory form, you'll even have troubles with banks on those. You want a very thorough, detailed.
I've gotten to the point where most of them require me to just use theirs.
Yeah, that's another one.
Okay, so we have one drafted.
Limited, very limited. It's only with regards to the sale of that property. But yeah, it's
getting approved with the underwriter is a big challenge with that.
Even financial institutions are starting to do that too, and it's
become a lump. Oh gosh, what a beating!
An issue.
Yeah, so that's some of the problems that we went through. Like even moving at a property, going through all these scenarios. It was out in Arizona, Sun City West, outside of Phoenix. We had the property, and they, the one who owned it, he ended up getting into, he ended up with dementia. And so they had to kind of come behind him, find all these assets, all these bank accounts, these two properties, and figure out, okay, now what are we going to do with them? And, nobody wanted them. So the objective was to liquidate and kind of get out of all of this. But, he's not in his right frame of mind to be able to approve or not approve anything.
Right.
So they have to establish, without any will or trust, a guardianship. And guardianships are no joke. I joke about, the cost of getting a trust is more expensive than a will. I mean, right. So you say on average, what were you thinking? Like $8,000 to $10,000 or something to set up a trust?
Oh, not with us.
No.
We're actually lower.
Okay.
So
Good.
on average, you'd be 3 to 8.
Somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there, depending on all the bells and whistles you put in there and stuff like that.
So an immediate benefit for him, and he had spent the $8,000, right? And got himself a trust establishing how to handle all of his assets. We should have, because he had no kids. His wife had already passed away.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
And I guess he thought he was going to live forever. And he's got a twin brother, and the twin brother is perfectly fine, but he didn't turn out that way. I mean, he ended up with the dementia and everything just kind of went downhill. But had he had a trust, instead we had to go through the guardianship process, and that was exceeding $30,000 in order for them to go through the state, because they were in Washington, and this is in Arizona, for them to allow us to even have the authority to sell this property. I'll tell you why it's complicated. I'll give you why.
Yeah.
Who owned that particular property was his deceased wife's parents. That's whose name was on it.
So they
And the first beneficiary or first trustee, what do you call it? First beneficiary?
Beneficiary.
Okay,
Yeah.
first one was her,
Uh-huh.
and she passed away. He's the second beneficiary, and he now is incapacitated. So to pierce all of this,
Yeah.
to get to his will, and there's nobody else to be interested. Like, what if she had, sisters or something, and she didn't?
Yeah.
So kind of some of it made it easier
You
for
gotta
us.
prove that. Like,
But
you've got to go through those.
And then we
steps.
finally got down to the lowest level, which was he ultimately is the only one that would really qualify as the heir of this. So he ended up getting it. Now we had to determine, is the relationship proper for his sister to facilitate all of this and become the actual guardian of the entire property so they could close and fund on the thing.
Yeah.
So it took us, I immediately, when they told me about all this, I said, the first thing we're doing is going to a title company. I need to establish that we can even sell this darn thing.
Right. Because you don't want to waste your time. Like,
And that's another thing. Like, so you call me or other people call me. That's the very first thing I'm going to start with. Yeah, I don't want to waste everybody's time if I can't establish that, well, you can even sell the darn thing. Don't put money in the property. Let's first determine that that's clear. And the answer is going to be yes at some point.
right. But
But-
how far?
But if we put it on the market and we find out we need another 90 days to even establish something.
You just use the other example of, if we put $50,000 into the house, it could make 200.
Yeah.
Well, that guardian
Market today.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
You already spent 30,000 of that 50 just trying to prove who can sell the house.
Yeah.
Well, great. Do we want to put another 50 into it to make it 80? Like,
yeah.
what a waste of that $50,000 already.
Sure.
You wasted it on finding out who can sell it in regards to it, not putting it into the house.
Yeah. My outlooks are typically only going to be 60, 90 days out, right?
Yeah.
So if it does take 6 months to establish all this, you're going to lose that time. The other property that they owned, we went through, that one was a long process too, because the title company had issue with the way the trust was written. So they took issue with the way, but he didn't
Yeah.
create it with the intention to exit,
Right.
he didn't, because I think he owned that particular property in the trust that he and his wife owned. They had a trust on that property, just not the other one. It was in his in-laws' name. Anyway, so that was a kind of a fun exercise and experience. But we knew all that up front. It was the pain the family had to go through. It made no impact on what I did to execute and get the thing done, because we put enough leadway time.
Also prolonged. Okay. So you got a precursor to that.
I did. We probably lost 30 days on one, but the other one, it took us, we put a lot into rehabbing it, and it was every bit of a year and a half to get that cleaned up so we could actually have clean title to close. But so that one did take us quite a bit of time. Okay. Let me ask you this. What advice would you give real estate agents that are dealing with the resale of a property that's in an estate or trust? Are they different? What's the difference? I don't even know what that means. An estate and a trust?
So an estate and a trust are two different things, because the estate is the probate estate. It's the estate of the person in their name. Trust is an entity that owns the asset. It just so happened to be that someone was the beneficiary, like they own the trust that they set up. So obviously, a trust is going to be so much easier for anyone in the real estate industry to sell the property. You don't have to worry about court.
Everything is lined up. You know who can do it,
That's exactly right.
and everything's established.
Well, and you don't even care who the beneficiaries are. You know who the beneficiary is. It's the trust.
The trust, yeah.
So you cut the check to the trust and boom, you're done.
And then the trust can determine how they split it up.
That's exactly
Nothing to
right.
do with us.
The estate, you're going to have to deal with the executor, which is almost like a trustee. But then you're dealing with court approval if it's being sold while the probate process is still happening on. So you got to get court approval, things of that nature. But the downside is kind of gets back to your big concern is, well, if the probate estate's done and it's transferred to the 3 kids, now you got to get 3 people to sign off on all of this and agree to the terms to everything. Well, if someone thinks the house is worth more,
Yep, which they all do.
yeah, they always do. But one may be a little bit
You're never going to get,
more than the other.
they're never all going to agree on that.
That's exactly right. So the trust is going to be easier, and for the fact of you don't have to wait for the court approval. Because if mom and dad are dead and they just died, well, it's going to take a little bit to get someone appointed authority to be able to sell the home, to even put it on the market. Well, you're wasting that time to do that. With a trust, mom and dad die, boom, new trustees in place, they can get it on the market. It's as simple as that. So
it's funny, in general, and I'm in real estate and I believe in investing in real estate. I don't invest in the stock market.
100%.
I don't invest in a lot of other things, but I'm well invested in real estate and owning property. So, like for me, my wife and I, let's say we've got 4 rental properties. And we have our own primary. Would we set up a trust for each individual property? We set up a single trust with all properties that get added and we just keep adding it to the trust?
So you could do that. Well, what I mean by that is you don't have to set up a trust for each individual property.
Yeah.
You could. I don't recommend it. Now, putting all of the properties under one trust, I have a concern with from a liability aspect.
Because someone gets hurt in one, they can sue the trust and affects all of them?
That's exactly right. So what I would recommend is setting up an LLC, a limited liability company, to where the company can own the rental properties, and then your trust owns your interest in the company. So that way that asset still avoids probate. So really who has the authority to deal with the rental properties? Well, it's the owner of the LLC. Oh, well, it happens to be the trust, which then we've got the trustee who's in charge of that. So it's still a seamless transition.
When you can sell off each individual LLC simply, because they're all, so when you sell it, it's just written on the CAD, right? Appraisal district. It's just written in the name of the LLC.
Yep. Yeah. So
And then the trust owns interest in that particular LLC.
the LLC.
Okay.
Yep. So it'd be no different than if y'all set the LLC up in your individual names and then you own the LLC, but then the properties were in the name of the LLC. Well, y'all are the ones that have the authority to sign that deed on behalf of ABC LLC because you own the LLC. Well, the same thing for the trust. It's just you've removed your personal self, put your trust in the ownership position. So that way it's a seamless transition for the company upon your death to, okay, who can step in and act on behalf of the company? What's the trustee?
Mhm.
So,
And then the trust that owns all of it's 100%. Let's say the trust owns all the properties. Then you can divide out interest in the trust between your siblings or not, or your
children or
dependents,
whatever.
your dependents. In where I was going originally was like, I don't like leaving children with lots of property. Personally, I think it's very complicated because it doesn't divide very well and it's not liquidity. So you can't use it.
right.
And it's hard. I just feel like it's an undue hardship if the children are not in the business, right? They may not be in the rental business.
Yeah.
And now they're stuck with all these properties that they have to address and deal with regular ongoing requests and problems.
Well, the good part is they can sell them.
Well,
Like
certainly.
if you don't,
But you've got ongoing leases. I mean, you've got some controls in there that make things, you can't sell it as an ongoing lease.
yeah, you can. Oh yeah. The new owner, the new owner just has to honor the current lease.
That's what I'm saying.
So
Yeah,
why
that-
are you saying you can't sell it then?
If a current lease is in place.
You can still sell that property.
Oh, it's sold to somebody else that picks up the lease.
Yes.
I'm
But
sorry.
they just have to honor.
You're
the
right.
lease. You're
exactly right.
Yeah, but
Get out.
but
Yeah.
you're exactly right. Like,
You're right. You're right.
what good does it do to where if
You don't want to do that, by the way. It's stupid. Don't do that because
then you get stuck with those?
well, no, the problem is that, yeah, well, you're selling specific terms to somebody else and either it works for them or it doesn't,
Yeah,
but it lowers the value by a solid 10 or 15%. Don't do that.
really.
It doesn't, I can't, buying a property that has active tenants in it and they turn over the lease to me, I will pay far less than as if I started over from scratch and could set all of my own terms because I have full control. If you take over terms that are already in place, I'm stuck with whatever they have available. It will reduce the value. Plus, I can promise you those tenants have zero interest in selling that property. They're not going to keep it clean. They're not going to make it available for people to see. If I'm selling it, especially if I'm selling it to a retail client, meaning their intention is to buy and live there, it's not a good experience for them either. They will also offer less money. So generally, don't sell properties with active tenants. I'm just telling you, generally don't do it. Anyone can call me on that anytime. I can go over a lot of other reasons.
That actually it makes sense,
But the answer is right. As long as they honor the lease in place, then anybody else can take possession. But they're devalued.
You got to find someone that's willing to buy it, or two, you're willing to, like you said, take less money because someone's not going to pay full price for it.
Right.
So yeah,
they're hard to sell and nobody's happy, and it's just not as good of a deal. So that is something that does come up, and I do think that. But I just don't like, if I pass away, even leaving if I've got 20 properties or whatever we end up with, and leaving it to my 3 kids, that is a mess to me. And that's just the way I think about it.
So
I would rather,
before?
my intention is absolutely to liquidate it and put it in something that's a lot more tangible. Unless I have, and I may have, my kids might be into real estate. I might change my mind. But my thinking is if they aren't, or I want to be equitable in it, then I at least, or I may let them have choices if they want a piece of one. Yeah. I might give them an equitable interest in that particular property. They can decide on those things. But generally, I just think liquidating them all at the top of their value is what I would recommend the family do. That's what I would probably put in my deal if I hadn't sold them already.
Right.
And I might, because
and see, that's where it comes back to if you do a third, they can sell it. We don't care. We're done.
Yeah.
So,
but it's always like assuming they all want to sell them, right?
That's exactly right.
So complicated.
And if one of them wants to own it, then they got to cough up the money or their portion of the liquidity of the estate.
Yeah.
Say, okay, fine. You can take the bank account that is the same value as the house, and I'll take the house. Okay. But goes back to they got to work it out.
Very cool. All right. And that kind of covers, estate planning, what you do. And then I wanted to talk about real estate. Do you have anything specific that you wanted to kind of share or talk about? It could be in anything. It could even be a hot topic or things that are happening today, or any in your business. Do you see your business making changes in the future as laws are kind of changing and fine tuning? That's not too detailed and boring.
You're right.
That people will, you might be excited about it.
Yeah, right. But they may find it very boring. Yeah. Which is actually very common.
I would love to read those things, but
even
I'll trust you.
I don't really want to listen to your podcast because I listen to it at home anyways. Because you talk about it, I'm like, that's fair enough. Now, so really, the hot topic for me is what cracks me up is a lot of people like, yeah, I'll get my estate plan done when I retire. Like, is that, because that's when people need to get it done.
So we talked about trigger points in the beginning, right? Trigger points is adding dependents, or taking on real estate,
or having a.
But waiting until you're dead or close to death
is pointless.
It's probably not the best strategy.
Yeah, you want to make the biggest mess for your family, then do nothing. Just let them deal with it, and then they're gonna cuss your name from while you're in the grave or something. And you don't want that. What people need to realize is an estate plan, whether it be a will or a trust, is not for you. It's for your family. You're setting up the rules and the game plan so that way when you're no longer here, they can act. And so that's people got to understand that. And when they understand that, they see the value in it of, okay, I am doing this to leave a plan or a legacy for my family or beneficiaries, whoever it may be. It may not even be family. It could be a charity. It could be this or that. It could be friends. Doesn't matter. But if you have any inclination of this is how I want things to go, you better write it out. Because if you don't write it out, then it doesn't matter. Just dust in the wind, as we all are, like Kansas says.
I'll tell you one thing, Spencer, you should have concern with is the upcoming generation is a lot of passive, inactive, not forward thinking, self-centered people. It is a lot of the generation coming, behind us. And part of it,
Or I'm entitled.
there's
What
an
am I supposed to
entitlement.
get from them?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
there's that sense of it for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like forward thinking and problem solving and things like that. There's a general lack of even masculinity. It's one of the things that I talk about sometimes on my podcast is that I think we have a situation where people are not taking action to protect and provide for their family, and they have this inactive, role in it. Like we have a responsibility. I know for me, I've kind of moved into a role within my own family as they come to me for advice on how to deal with things and do things, right? Comes in that situation more of a head of a family type of scenario. And when you do that, you have to proactively advise and do things that's in the best interest of the family.
Right.
So setting these things up might be something we think about today in our generation, but I'm saying like coming forward in the future, a lot of them are so self-absorbed and they want to know what it's in for them. There is the entitlement aspect for sure, but they don't have that I need to look after and take care of my family syndrome. And it's getting stripped from that. There's not any interest in it.
Right.
And that's a real concern to me.
It is. And that's what this is all about. Estate planning is, if I'm not here, who's going to care for my spouse? Or how is my spouse going to be provided for? And who's going to provide for my kids and care for them? And if you leave that up to the court, well, the court's going to look at paper of, we've got two people battling it on who should raise the kids. We're going to look at who looks best on paper, not who's more emotionally fit for your kids.
Unfortunately, they're going to look at it very statically for sure.
And like my brother's a great example. So me and my brother's 3 years older than me. They live out in East Texas, and he and I have a great relationship. They have 2 kids, and we were talking, and he said, "Hey,
what happens? Yeah,
you're not going to be the guardian of our kids. You will not raise our kids." And I said, "Great, I'm glad you're telling me this, but why?" He goes, "Because I want my kids raised in the country. And I know you and Mackenzie won't move out here because that's not what y'all want to do."
No, you're city folk.
Yeah. We're the city folk.
Yeah,
we're the city folk. And I was like, gosh, what a great example that I can share with people.
What if you wrote that in a paper that you don't get the kids, you don't find out till then? You're like, well, what happened?
Oh, dude, I'd have been ticked. I'd have been ticked that I wasn't on the list.
Yeah.
What did I do to my brother to make him think that I'm not worthy to raise his kids?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do that I'm worthy or not. He said, "I know you do a great job, but this is
but his wishes are,
this is very specific to him." And I'm like, I've actually taken that back. And this was years ago when he said this to me. I use that in an example with my clients of when we're sitting down talking about this of, okay, why'd you choose this person? Oh, well, they're my brother. Okay. Does your brother have kids? No. What's he do? Oh, he's a bachelor and he moves around. I'm like, great choice.
Yeah. You might want to think about
that. And I go, you don't have to pick family. They go, oh, a lot of times people are surprised that they're not obligated to pick family. They're not required to. It's like, oh, well, shoot, then I've got friends here that would be great. I'm like, then let's pick them and let's talk about
and
that.
talk to them first. Don't surprise them.
Don't surprise them. But it's one of those of, you're doing this to better your family.
Yeah.
Even if you're not there, because you're putting them in a position that at the time is going to be best for them because they're going to be raised in this family. And that's what you wanted because that family mirrors or knows how you would want to raise your kids if you're not here. Or this person's going to be in charge of the money until they turn 18 or what have you, because this person's good with money. And those aren't always the same person. The person that raises the kids may not always be good with money, and vice versa. The person good with money may not be good with kids. That bachelor brother is a multi-billionaire because he has a great company.
Yeah.
So he's great with business.
Yeah. On paper, he might look real good. Yeah.
But raising kids.
Let me ask another dumb question. So let's say you may have someone that it says, I'm going to get a large life insurance policy in lieu of like, and it may not sound right, but basically instead of spending all the time and energy doing will and estate planning, they may just get a large life insurance policy. That still has to go through probate.
Well, it does. Yeah.
Even if it strictly says beneficiary is clear.
If there's a beneficiary on it, but if the beneficiary is a minor, it's going to be held back in trust by state law until they turn 18.
Yeah.
But what did you just do? If you got $1 million life insurance policy and an 18-year-old got it,
Yeah. There's no plan for them. Yeah.
there's no plan. And we were all 18 once.
Well,
We got $1 million.
yeah.
What are we going to go do with it?
That'd be a lot different than if it was 40.
That's exactly right. So there's reasons for maybe setting a trust up that says, okay, instead of you getting it all out at 18, we can cut it up over time. So that way you can learn a little bit. And as you get older, the more you can get and go do with it whatever you want. Hopefully by 30, you've got yourself established. Or if you don't, you know what? It's a sink or swim age. You're either not going to have good money management skills or not.
Do you have people that like write in that, they got to go to college, they got to meet certain requirements before they get any type of?
Yep. The majority of it, actually, how we do that is it's more of an incentive. Okay,
Gotcha.
you're going to get.
You always want to do positive, not negative, right?
Yeah. And
So don't punish them for not going. Say, hey, if you go, I'll get you get another $50,000.
Well, or you get
Whatever.
it sooner. So say for example, you break their share up, but
I
you
like
can have
that.
everything or 20% at 25, and then all of it at 30. Then we can build in there. Hey, but if you graduate with this degree, but by this age, you can get a distribution sooner.
Ooh.
And then maybe if you get a master's before this age, you can get another distribution sooner in regards to that. So that way it's not you're not going to get all of this, but you could get some of it sooner rather than later.
I like that.
And we've done that. Actually, clients that signed yesterday did something like that for both their kids. It comes out of their respective 50% shares, but it's hey, you know what? You did that. Here's $20,000. Congratulations. You can do with it whatever you want.
No, school was $200,000, but
Right.
and now you can go buy a car or put down a down payment for something.
That's exactly right. Or if you want to go blow it all on a party, that's your choice. You're not getting any more to just go do it freely. That's just part of it, And so, but yeah, it's more kind of an incentive than decentivizing them.
I like that.
If they want to just sit back and go, yeah, I really don't want to go to school anymore. Okay, fine. You're still going to be provided for, but you're not going to get the free distribution as it would be if you would have done this. So,
okay, awesome. Well, we're actually coming up close to an hour. Best thing is, how do we find Spencer Chaffin?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find this on the internet at bccounselorsatlawcom, or you can call us at 972-584-9668.
Okay. And then,
or if you're at Sean's office, just knock on the door next to us.
Yeah, just knock on the door next to us. And then you've got a podcast that you go over a lot of estate planning. I think is a lot of the messages that you go through.
So on our podcast, which you can find on our website, we cover estate planning, business planning, and you'll also learn a little bit about the marijuana industry up in Oklahoma, because my business partner works up in Oklahoma. He runs our Oklahoma City office, and Oklahoma legalized medical marijuana. So we do compliance for that.
Gotcha.
So it's still more business related, but with the marijuana aspect of it, of what are those rules and regulations? Because obviously there's a lot more hoops you got to jump through in that industry.
Sure.
So we touch on that. So
very good. Sean Corbett again, True West Realty. If you are an agent or someone looking to buy or sell real estate in Dallas-Fort Worth, I am a good resource for you. I have a lot of coaching, a lot of training. I help with anyone. It could be anyone in a real estate transaction. That is my specialty, is solving real estate problems. Anyway, you can find my podcast at my name, Sean, Shaune, Corbett, Corbett, and YouTube. So please subscribe. Continue to get more good content for you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Sean, man.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it.